Dean Rusk disagrees with you, and he was the Secretary of State at the time, but that's fine.
The communist nations have exploited the turmoil of a time of transition in an effort to extend communist control into other areas of the world.
Thoughts on Dean Rusk and America's involvement in Vietnam? I know next to nothing about that.
Exactly.
The Maltese Phantom of Russiagate. In the shifting narratives of the Trump-Russia probe, a Maltese academic named Joseph Mifsud has remained a linchpin regarding claims of collusion. He is the professor who allegedly told Trump campaign advisor George Papadopoulos that the Russians had emails related to the Clinton campaign. The FBI says it opened its investigation in late July 2016 after Papadopoulos relayed that information to Australian diplomat Alexander Downer, and the Australians tipped off US authorities. While some news accounts describe Mifsud as an accomplice to Russian clandestine operations or a cutout intermediary, others contend he is a full-fledged Russian spy. In an official report, Democrats on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence asserted that, in their approach to Papadopoulos, the Russians used common tradecraft and employed a cutout, a Kremlin-linked Maltese professor named Joseph Mifsud. No one in the American intelligence community has publicly challenged this description, but there is one major problem with this story. No evidence has been presented to support the claim. Although Mifsud has traveled many times to Russia and has contacts with Russian academics, his closest public ties are to Western governments, politicians, and institutions, including the CIA, FBI, and British intelligence services. One of Mifsud's jobs has been to train diplomats, police officers, and intelligence officers at schools in London and Rome, where he lived and worked over the last dozen years. The House of Mirrors' nature of the claim that Mifsud is a spy is reflected in the guilty plea Papadopoulos signed on October 5, 2017, for making several material false statements to the FBI. It reads in part, Defendant Papadopoulos further told the investigating agents that the professor was a nothing and just a guy talking up connections or something. In truth, and in fact, however, Defendant Papadopoulos understood that the professor had substantial connections to Russian government officials and had met with some of those officials in Moscow immediately prior to telling Defendant Papadopoulos about the thousands of emails. And, over a period of months, Defendant Papadopoulos repeatedly sought to use the professor's Russian connections in an effort to arrange a meeting between the campaign and Russian government officials. If Mifsud truly is a Russian agent, which is key to the collusion narrative, he could prove to be one of the most promiscuous spies in modern history. Western intelligence agencies and European politicians would have to spend the next few decades repairing the damage he did to global security by infiltrating key institutions and personnel. As of yet, however, there is no indication that any intelligence service has begun the embarrassing but highly important assessment of how it was penetrated and how it can refortify the vulnerabilities that Mifsud may have exposed. There has been no public effort to arrest him. while most media accounts have simply repeated official claims that Mifsud is a sketchy character whose visits to Russia and academic contacts suggest he is working for Russian intelligence, a look at the available evidence challenges that narrative. It also raises the possibility that Mifsud, whose circles are tied to the Clintons, may, like another professor recently in the news, Stefan Halper, have actually been working for Western intelligence agencies. Disappearance. Painting a full picture of Mifsud is difficult because after the 58-year-old professor was first identified by name in a Washington Post article in the weeks following Papadopoulos' confession, he gave a few interviews to the international press and then disappeared. Rumors circulated in the press that the Kremlin-linked professor may have been recalled to Russia or was liquidated. A new book by former colleagues of Mifsud's Stefan Roh, a 50-year-old Swiss-German lawyer, and Thierry Pastor, a 35-year-old French political analyst, reports that he is alive and well. Their account includes a recent interview with him. Their self-published book, The Faking of Russiagate, The Papadopoulos Case, an investigative analysis, includes a recent interview with Mifsud in which he denies saying anything about Clinton emails to Papadopoulos. Mifsud, they write, stated vehemently that he never told anything like this to George Papadopoulos. Mifsud asked rhetorically, "From where should I have this information?" Mifsud's account seems to be supported by Alexander Downer, the Australian diplomat who alerted authorities about Papadopoulos. As reported in the Daily Caller, Downer said Papadopoulos never mentioned emails. He spoke instead about the Russians possessing material that could be damaging to Clinton. This new detail raises the possibility that Mifsud, Papadopoulos' alleged source for the information, never said anything about Clinton-related emails either. In interviews with Real Clear Investigations, Roh and Pastor said Mifsud is anything but a Russian spy. Rather, he is more likely a Western intelligence asset. According to the two authors, it was a former Italian intelligence official, Vincenzo Scotti, a colleague of Mifsud's and one-time interior minister, who told the professor to go into hiding. "I don't know who was hiding him," said Roh, "but I'm sure it was organized by someone, and I'm sure it will be difficult to get to the bottom of it." Roh said Mifsud was afraid when he first went into hiding. He had been moved to a place far away in Italy. In November and December, it broke him down. He was under so much pressure and cut off from the world. He had no internet or access to communications. Pastor and Roh, who hired Mifsud as a business development consultant in 2015, write that far from being a Russian spy, Mifsud had only one master: the Western political, diplomatic and intelligence world, his only home, of which he is still deeply dependent. There is plenty of open source material that supports their thesis. According to his resume, Mifsud received his BA at the University of Malta in 1982, an MA at the University of Padua in 1989, and later his doctoral degree at Queen's University Belfast. He worked at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in his home country of Malta and was involved in its 2004 accession into the European Union. In 2008, Mifsud was named president of the European Mediterranean University of Slovenia. Contrary to media reports depicting Mifsud as a shadowy figure, an October 31, 2017 article in the New York Times, for example, says Mifsud presented himself as a professor. Although his academic affiliations are hard to pin down, he was a respected teacher and employed by legitimate academic institutions. He taught at Link Campus University in Rome, photo at top, whose lecturers and professors include senior Western diplomats and intelligence officials from a number of NATO countries, especially Italy and the United Kingdom. Mifsud also taught at the University of Stirling in Scotland and the London Academy of Diplomacy, which trained diplomats and government officials, some of them sponsored by the UK's Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the British Council, or by their own governments. He also taught at the London Centre for International Law Practice, where Papadopoulos was also affiliated. They met, however, in Rome in March 2016, when Papadopoulos was part of a visiting delegation from the London Centre and Mifsud was in the Italian capital. Most of their subsequent meetings were in London, including the April 26th breakfast, when Mifsud is alleged to have told Papadopoulos that the Russians had dirt on Clinton in the form of thousands of emails. Researchers, including British political analyst Chris Blackburn, have used open sources to show that Mifsud was a well-known figure in Western academic, diplomatic and intelligence circles. Blackburn, whose research has previously focused on Islamic terrorist groups, has worked with senior leaders within global intelligence agencies. He told Real Clear Investigations that Mifsud's known contacts suggest he's not a Russian spy, or he is one of the most successful in history. Shortly after the FBI opened its counterintelligence probe based on the Papadopoulos information on July 31st, the lead agent on the case, FBI Deputy Director of Counterintelligence Peter Strzok, went to London to investigate. A counterintelligence officer would first look at someone's most frequent contacts, says Blackburn. So when Strzok gets to London in early August to look into the Papadopoulos meeting with Mifsud, he would have found that one of his most notable contacts is Claire Smith. Smith is a prominent British diplomat whose biography describes her as an envoy with 25 years of experience and expert in managing the complexities of global business practices. Her postings included Beijing and Islamabad. She worked with Mifsud at 3 different institutions: the London Academy of Diplomacy, University of Stirling, and Link Campus University in Rome. Blackburn believes that Smith's working relationship with Mifsud is an important piece of evidence. She was on the United Kingdom's Joint Intelligence Committee, says Blackburn. It's a very significant institution in the UK's intelligence community, answering directly to the Prime Minister. For 8 years, until April 2017, Smith was also a member of Britain's Security Vetting Appeals Panel, which according to its website is an independent avenue of appeal for civil service staff and contractors whose security clearance has been refused or withdrawn. Smith was vetting UK government employees, says Blackburn. So how could she have missed that her colleague Joseph Mifsud was actually a Russian spy? She continued to work alongside him. She got a picture taken with him. If it's true the professor was working with Russian intelligence, says Blackburn, he was in place to recruit anyone he was training in Rome or London. Effectively, Mifsud would have been a talent spotter for Russian intelligence. Moreover, explains Blackburn, if Mifsud proved to be a spy, he would have compromised a number of high-level European intelligence and diplomatic officials the professor worked with in London and Rome. They include Gianni Pittella, an Italian senator who was previously a member of the European Parliament, where he headed the Socialists and Democrats alliance, one of the Parliament's most important left-wing blocs. Joseph is my dear friend, Pittella told the Italian press in November after news of Mifsud's alleged involvement in the Russiagate scandal spread. Pittella was a visiting lecturer when Mifsud was director of the London Academy of Diplomacy and is on the Link Campus Foundation's board. Link offers degrees in strategic studies and diplomatic science. Blackburn says that among the students who attend Link are police officers from around Europe, especially Italy, Malta, and Eastern European countries, as well as a large contingent from Brazil. Link's president is the former Italian Interior Minister Vincenzo Scotti, who is alleged to have told Mifsud to hide. The CIA has held widely publicized events at Link. In 2004, for instance, the CIA arranged a conference on terrorism there. New Frontiers of Intelligence Analysis, wrote David Ignatius in the Washington Post, brought together officials from intelligence and police agencies of nearly 30 countries. A 24-year veteran of the CIA named Carol Dumaine, wrote Ignatius, spent 2 years arranging the conference with the Link campus of the University of Malta in Rome. American intelligence and law enforcement officials are also involved with Link. Former National Security Agency and Central Intelligence Agency officers and analysts regularly teach there. The FBI has trained students at Link since 2010. In September 2016, or 2 months after the FBI opened its Russia investigation, the FBI's legal attaché working out of the US Embassy in Rome sent Special Agent Preston Ackerman to conduct a seminar at Link. FBI spokespersons did not respond to requests for comment on the Bureau's past history with Link or Ackerman's seminar. In another of the loose threads connected to the Russia inquiry, an FBI colleague of Ackerman's at the embassy in Rome, Michael Gaeta, was the Bureau's pointman for Christopher Steele, the former British spy who is believed to be the author of the now infamous dossier paid for by the Clinton campaign alleging the Trump team's ties to Russia. When Steele first started uncovering Trump's alleged connections to Putin, he reached out to Gaeta, whom he had known from a previous investigation. In July 2016, Steele summoned Gaeta to London to brief him on his Trump findings. And in October, Gaeta called Steele to Rome. According to a Washington Post story, the FBI team there asked Steele if he'd ever heard of Papadopoulos, and Steele said he hadn't. Does that mean the FBI knew the source of Papadopoulos' information regarding the Clinton emails? If not, they missed a central Russiagate figure who worked only a short cab ride away. Conversely, if they did know Mifsud and thought he was a Russian agent, why did the Bureau continue to send agents to teach at Link, with which he had been affiliated for nearly a decade by the time of the Papadopoulos affair? Both the Bureau and the CIA were constant presences at the school. Surely they'd run across Mifsud before. Many others that the FBI worked with knew him, from high-level British intelligence officials to members of the Italian cabinet. If Mifsud was a Kremlin-linked cutout, why didn't the FBI warn the US's European partners, or even US government agencies, about the man who was at the center of Russiagate? If he is a spy, why no action? If Joseph Mifsud truly is a Russian agent, it is odd that neither the Western intelligence agencies he snookered nor the US government is acting as if he is. For instance, the FBI interviewed Mifsud in Washington, D.C. between February 8th, 2017, less than 2 weeks after its first interview with Papadopoulos on January 27th, when he admitted to meeting Mifsud and talking about Hillary Clinton emails. Mifsud was in Washington to speak at the large annual conference for Global Ties US, an organization that has been a partner of the US State Department for over 50 years. Several State Department officials also spoke at the conference. France's ambassador to Washington, Gerard Araud, was one of several foreign envoys to the United States who lectured at the 2017 event. So why did the FBI not arrest Mifsud? The State Department declined to comment when RCI emailed to ask why it did not prevent its officials from appearing at an event with a Kremlin-linked figure who was key to Russia's effort to interfere in the 2016 election. If Mifsud was a Russian spy, it's unclear why, after Papadopoulos' July 27, 2017 arrest, that no US intelligence officials warned their European partners that they were hosting a foreign agent on their territory. Mifsud met with many senior British politicians, even after the FBI knew of the Downer conversations and had interviewed Papadopoulos under oath. Mifsud met Alok Sharma, then a Foreign Office Minister for Asia Pacific, and now Minister of State for Employment, a couple of times at least, including at a fundraiser October 19th, 2 weeks after Papadopoulos' October 5th guilty plea. At that same fundraiser, Mifsud was photographed next to Boris Johnson, the UK Foreign Secretary, the most senior intelligence official responsible for running MI6, the UK's Foreign Intelligence Service and Government Communications Headquarters, the UK equivalent of America's National Security Agency. The Office of the Special Counsel, Robert Mueller, declined to comment when RCI emailed to ask if it alerted the UK government about Mifsud after Papadopoulos' arrest. British government agencies did not respond by press time to requests for comment about whether the UK had been warned by its US partners about Mifsud before the Foreign Secretary and other senior politicians mingled with an alleged Russian agent. It appears that US intelligence authorities may have been just as unconcerned about keeping their Italian counterparts informed. For even after the Washington Post revealed his name October 30th, Mifsud was giving interviews to the Italian press 2 days later in the middle of Rome, denying that he'd told Papadopoulos anything about Clinton emails. When asked if any action was taken to extradite Mifsud or even interview him further in Europe, the Office of the Special Counsel declined to comment on an ongoing investigation. The office also declined to answer why Mifsud has not been charged. Mueller indicted 13 Russian individuals and 3 Russian companies for their involvement in a pro-Russian social media campaign during the 2016 campaign cycle. But the Kremlin-linked individual that is alleged to have passed the Trump team information about Russia's interference in the election is at liberty. Rowe recalled that he first met the Maltese professor 10 years ago. At the time, Mifsud was teaching at the Link campus in Rome when it was a branch of the University of Malta. Several years later, Rowe told RCI, "Joseph asked me to give a speech at Link campus. Rowe described Mifsud to me as a bridge builder between people and institutions, West and East. That's why he hired Mifsud in 2015 as a business development consultant." The professor boasted of his contacts with Russian academics and got Rowe on a panel discussion at an April 2016 symposium in Moscow that was sponsored by the Valdai Discussion Club. Their panel discussion, centering on energy security issues and Russia's position in the global energy market, was moderated by Ivan Timofeyev, Valdai's program director. Timofeyev was part of Mifsud's broad international network of academics and researchers. Mifsud had connected Rowe and Timofeyev on a previous trip to Russia the year before, talking up connections. Although the two men are clearly fond of Mifsud, they also echo Papadopoulos' description of the professor as someone who liked to talk up alleged connections. "Stefan hired Joseph to help develop his business," said Rowe's co-author, Thierry Pastor. "He was supposed to introduce him to business figures and officials. Stefan has had an office in Moscow since 2000. He hired Joseph because he wanted to have higher-level contacts. But it turned out Joseph didn't have those contacts in Russia." Pastor remembered that Mifsud had spoken about meeting Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. "Yes, he met Lavrov," said Pastor. "He met him once or twice in a large group. He knows Lavrov, but Lavrov doesn't know Joseph. His contacts in Russia are with academics." "The same is true of Timofeyev," said Pastor. "Ivan is a young researcher and highly respected," he noted. Timofeyev is president of the Russian International Affairs Council, a Russian think tank with close ties to Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. "Ivan is quite an important person in Russian academic circles," said Pastor. "But as far as I know, he's not connected to Russian intelligence services." George Papadopoulos apparently saw Timofeyev as a conduit to Russian state power. Again, Mifsud played the connector, introducing Papadopoulos to Timofeyev by email in the middle of April 2016. The Trump advisor and Russian researcher communicated for several weeks by email and Skype, according to Papadopoulos' plea, to lay the groundwork for a potential meeting between the Trump campaign and Russian officials. Papadopoulos, as excerpts from his emails at the time show, was single-mindedly determined to arrange a meeting between Trump and Putin. The Trump campaign had prioritized resetting relations with Russia, as had the Obama White House before it, as well as every presidential administration since the end of the Cold War. Papadopoulos may have thought the best way to materialize a campaign promise and advance his station was to arrange a meeting that any experienced foreign policy hand would have considered highly improbable. The Russian president, like virtually everyone else in the world, believed Hillary Clinton was destined to be the next president of the United States. Putin would be unlikely to meet with her opponent and further alienate a future world leader who had already shown her disdain for his government while she was Secretary of State. Rowe and Pastor told me that Mifsud found Papadopoulos too aggressive. Both Mifsud and the Trump campaign advisor, half his age, were ambitious, quick to seize an opportunity and eager to be accepted and prove they belonged. Mifsud appears to have been something like a foreign policy impresario. One of his sources of income, he explained to Pastor, comes from chairing foreign policy panels. He traveled the world to rub elbows with prominent figures from the global policy community. At a 2009 conference sponsored by the Italian Foreign Ministry and the Brookings Institution, for instance, Mifsud appeared alongside well-known US foreign policy experts, such as former Clinton administration Deputy Secretary of State, Strobe Talbot. As a foreign policy specialist from a small island nation that typically served as the stepping stone of empires, Mifsud appears to have an acute sense of power and how to position himself favorably. It seems he saw an opportunity in Rowe, a multi-millionaire who was as interested in foreign policy, diplomacy, and intelligence work as he himself was. Mifsud wanted him to invest in Link Campus. It was Link's reputation and seeing the school up close that impressed Stephen Rowe. Mifsud told me you can join, said Rowe, so I invested. In the fall of 2015, Rowe bought a 5% stake, seeing education as a good investment. It's not a large amount, Rowe told me, but it's a very impressive institution. Given the affiliations of Link's faculty and staff, as well as Mifsud's pedigree, Rowe thinks it's impossible that the man he hired as a business development consultant is a Russian agent. The FBI and CIA's work there would tend to exclude him from being a Russian spy. Rowe was surprised that the FBI detained him for questioning at JFK Airport when he brought his family to New York in October 2017 on a holiday. It was pretty scary, like in a film, Rowe told me. It's an impression that will stay with my children for a while. But Rowe, whose wife is a Russian fashion designer, found it remarkable that they didn't ask me a single question about Mifsud. Then after an hour or so I asked, "This is about Joseph, right?" I told them he's a great guy. It was after the Mueller interview, Rowe said, that he decided he needed to set the record straight and retrace his relationship with Mifsud and the events that led to Russiagate. That's when he and Pastor resolved to write a book. According to Rowe and Pastor's book, Mifsud believes he was set up and that George Papadopoulos was part of the sting operation. Rowe and Pastor think so too. Papadopoulos' wife, Simona Mangiante, dismissed the idea her husband was a spy in an Atlantic magazine article. Mangiante knew Mifsud as well. She reportedly started working for the Maltese academic at the London Centre for International Law Practice in September 2016, before she met her future spouse. In the January interview, Rowe asked Mifsud if he was working for MI6. "No," said Mifsud. "No, never. I was never an agent." According to Rowe and Pastor's book, however, he's part of an international clique that identifies itself with the values and causes represented by the Clintons and their various enterprises. Mifsud, they write, was always a Clintonist. Mifsud said something similar in the interview he gave to the Italian newspaper La Repubblica shortly before he went into hiding. "The only foundation I am a member of," he said, "is the Clinton Foundation." It's not clear what Mifsud may have been meant by that. There is no membership as such in the Clinton Foundation, except perhaps to identify himself as a part of liberal internationalist circles, like his friend and Link campus colleague Gianni Pittella. Pittella made a splash at the 2016 Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia, where he took a very vocal position against Donald Trump. I have taken the unprecedented step of endorsing and campaigning for Hillary Clinton because the risk of Donald Trump is too high, Pittella told Time magazine. I believe it is in the interest of the European Union and Italy to have Hillary Clinton in office. A Trump victory could be a disaster for the relationship between the USA and Italy. Mifsud's worldview, along with his array of European and American contacts and the lack of response by those high-level figures to the spy charge, have led Rowe to conclude that if Mifsud is working for any intelligence agency, it was Western rather than Russian. I call him an asset, a person who cooperates in an operation but is not a member of the team. If Mifsud was a Western intelligence asset, as Rowe and Pastor argue, it's still unclear what his role may have been in the Papadopoulos case. Congressional investigators on the Republican side speculate that Mifsud may have been part of a sting operation designed to open an FBI investigation on the Trump campaign. Roach and Pastor may be overstating Mifsud's role when they refer to him as an asset. Maybe he was more like a cat's paw, a person used by someone else to carry out a job for ends and results of which he was unaware. Mifsud's role, then, was to pass information or simply take meetings that would dirty Papadopoulos. Or the Maltese professor truly is a Russian spy? If so, Western intelligence services are looking at one of the largest and most embarrassing breaches in a generation, but none of the governments or intelligence agencies potentially compromised is acting like there's anything wrong. Or he might just be a man who wanted to seem important by repeating a rumor he'd heard to another man who also wanted to seem important. It's still unclear who may have put him in the middle of a political scandal and for what purposes. Robert Mueller soon may be exposed as the magician of a mission on Russia. thehill.com/opinion/white-house/45409-robert-mueller-soon-may-be-exposed-as-the-mission-of-Russia/John Solomon, July 23, 2019. While most of the political world focused its attention elsewhere, Special Prosecutor John Durham's team quietly reached out this summer to a lawyer representing European academic Joseph Mifsud, one of the earliest and most mysterious figures in the now closed Russia collusion case. An investigator told Swiss attorney Stefan Rowe that Durham's team wanted to interview Mifsud, or at the very least review a recorded deposition the professor gave in summer 2018 about his role in the drama involving Donald Trump, Russia, and the 2016 election. The contact, confirmed by multiple sources and contemporaneous email, sent an unmistakable message. Durham, the U.S. attorney hand-picked by Attorney General William Barr to determine whether the FBI committed abuses during the Russia investigation, is taking a second look at one of the noteworthy figures and the conclusions of former special counsel Robert Mueller's final report. The evidence I reviewed suggests Mueller's handiwork may be exposed for glaring omissions that, when brought to public light, leave key questions unanswered, especially about how the FBI's unprecedented probe of the Trump campaign started. Durham is focused on determining whether any government or private figures who came in contact with the Trump campaign in 2016 were engaged in improper surveillance, a U.S. official told me when asked about the Mifsud overture. For those who don't remember, Mifsud is a Maltese-born academic with a VIP Rolodex who frequented Rome and London for years and engaged at the highest levels of Western diplomatic and intelligence circles. Mueller's team alleges that Mifsud is the person who fed a story in spring 2016 to Trump campaign advisor George Papadopoulos about Moscow possessing purloined emails from former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. It was the earliest known contact in the now debunked collusion narrative and the seminal event that the FBI says prompted it on July 31st, 2016, to open its probe into the Trump campaign. Mueller concluded that Mifsud was a person with extensive Russia ties who planted the story about the Clinton emails in Moscow and then lied about his dealings with Papadopoulos when interviewed by the FBI in 2017. Papadopoulos has pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about his contacts with Mifsud. But unlike others accused of misleading Mueller, including Papadopoulos, former Trump advisor Michael Flynn, and former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, Mifsud was not charged with a crime. Conservative defenders of President Trump, including former House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, R. Califde, and Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham, RSC, have raised recent concerns that Mueller's portrayal of the Mifsud-Papadopoulos contacts doesn't add up. Rogue told me the information he is preparing to share with Durham's team from his client will accentuate those concerns. Mifsud was a long-time cooperator of Western intel who was asked specifically by his contacts at Link University in Rome and the London Centre of International Law Practice, LCILP, two academic groups with ties to Western diplomacy and intelligence, to meet with Papadopoulos at a dinner in Rome in mid-March 2016, Rowe told me. A May 2019 letter from Nunes to US intelligence officials corroborates some of Rowe's account, revealing photos showing that the FBI conducted training at Link in fall 2016 and that Mifsud and other Link officials met regularly with world leaders, including Boris Johnson, elected today as Britain's new Prime Minister. A few days after the March dinner, Rogue added, Mifsud received instructions from Link superiors to put Papadopoulos in contact with Russians, including a think tank figure named Ivan Timofeev and a woman he was instructed to identify to Papadopoulos as Vladimir Putin's niece. Mifsud knew the woman was not the Russian president's niece, but rather a student who was involved with both the Link and LCILP campuses, and the professor believed there was an effort underway to determine whether Papadopoulos was an agent provocateur seeking foreign contacts, Rowe said. The evidence, he told me, clearly indicates that this was not only a surveillance op, but a more sophisticated intel operation in which Mifsud became involved. Rogue has defended Mifsud in the media against various allegations, steadfastly denying Mueller's claim that his client ever told Papadopoulos about Clinton emails in Russia. Rowe wrote a book last year that first floated the idea of Mifsud as a Western intelligence op. If the FBI's and Mueller's portrayals are correct, Mifsud's current story could be simply a Russian disinformation campaign or an exaggeration by a lawyer who seeks media attention and book promotion. Thus, everything Mifsud says must be given careful scrutiny. But a close examination of the Mueller report identifies significant gaps and omissions and occasional inaccuracies that pose troubling questions. For example, the report never mentions the FBI's ties to Link. If the Bureau feared Mifsud had unsavory ties to Russia, why would it provide training to his academic group? Likewise, the Mueller report portrays Papadopoulos as the instigator who initiated contact with Mifsud and his Russian contacts. Campaign foreign policy advisor George Papadopoulos made early contact with Joseph Mifsud, a London-based professor who had connections to Russia and traveled to Moscow in April 2016, the report said. In fact, the contemporaneous evidence shows Mifsud was directed to seek out Papadopoulos at the March 14, 2016, dinner arranged by the LCILP and Link. Papadopoulos didn't know who Mifsud was when he arrived for the dinner. A month later, in mid-April 2016, Mifsud initiated introductions to Russian figures, including an email chain with Timofeev. Dear George Ivan, as promised, I had a long conversation today in Moscow with my dear friend Ivan from RIAC. Mifsud wrote in an April 16, 2016, email to Papadopoulos that I authenticated with US officials. Ivan is ready to meet with you in London or USA or Moscow. Rose said the idea for introducing the Trump advisor to Russians did not come from Papadopoulos or Russia, but from Mifsud's contacts at Link and LCILP. Likewise, Papadopoulos told me he didn't initially ask to be introduced to Russians, though he eventually engaged in Mifsud's offer. To back his story, Rowe provided me a page from Mifsud's 2018 deposition, the one he plans to provide Durham's team, in which the professor suggested the woman he introduced in April 2016 to Papadopoulos as Putin's niece was a setup taken from his campus. Are you joking? The deposition quotes Mifsud when Rowe asked about Putin's niece. The question is not Putin's niece in any way or form. She is a student who had just finished an MBA program and was, like many others, given the possibility of being a stagiaire, a European term for trainee or apprentice. One other Mifsud portrayal in the Mueller report and in court filings has raised eyebrows in intelligence and congressional circles. Mueller portrayed the FBI as being victimized during the Russia probe because Papadopoulos originally lied about Mifsud, tipping him to the Clinton emails, and that somehow impeded the Mueller team from adequately questioning the professor in February 2017. But new documents I obtained show Mifsud was anything but elusive and easily could have been interviewed before and after Papadopoulos pleaded guilty to lying. Mifsud was in Europe in summer 2018 for his deposition, routinely corresponded and met with European political and diplomatic officials for much of 2017, and even was interviewed by media outlets during the Mueller probe, according to email correspondence I reviewed. He also exchanged emails directly with FBI agents. Multiple American officials confirm, as do contemporaneous emails, that Mifsud was in Washington in December 2016 at the height of the FBI's Russia probe for a meeting with a State Department-backed group, Global Ties USA. Mifsud's contacts that month with senior executives of the group never were revealed to congressional intelligence investigators or mentioned in the Mueller report. Nor was Mifsud's email thanking Global Ties for meeting with him about a collaboration. An American directly familiar with Mifsud's contacts with Global Ties said they began in May 2016 and involved arranging diplomatic introductions and meetings around the globe. No one from US intelligence ever warned the group or suggested that Mifsud had improper ties to Russia. The FBI never interviewed the executive who met Mifsud in December 2016, the source said. There is now compelling evidence Mueller omitted or misrepresented important facts about Mifsud and Papadopoulos that could change the public's understanding of events. And those aren't the only omissions and factual errors to emerge. Mueller never disclosed in his report that Manafort business partner Konstantin Kilimnik, identified in the final report as having ties to Russian intelligence, actually was a regular informer for the State Department from 2012 to 2017. The report also incorrectly identifies an American citizen from the former Soviet Republic of Georgia as a Russian. Such omissions and mistakes add to the mistrust of the final product. And as the Durham team's overture to Roe makes clear, Mueller's testimony before Congress may not be the final verdict for his findings. There are too many questions still unanswered, starting with an enigmatic professor named Mifsud.
The most important thing about the investigation he doesn't look into. Watch this.
Director, the FBI interviewed Joseph Mifsud on February 10th, 2017. In that interview, Mr. Mifsud lied. You point this out on page 190.
So that's the guy we were just talking about with Aaron. Mifsud, he calls him. So the whole investigation started because of George Papadopoulos, who worked for the Trump campaign, told a guy that, hey, the Russians have this dirt on Hillary Clinton. That guy that Papadopoulos told that to tells the FBI they start the investigation. That's what started it. So the question is, where did Papadopoulos get that information from? Well, he got it from this guy, Mifsud, who lied to the FBI 3 times. So now I'll play this all the way through, just so, because it gets a little confusing. I just wanted to give you that background information, and here we go.
Director, the FBI interviewed Joseph Mifsud on February 10th, 2017. In that interview, Mr. Mifsud lied. You point this out on page 193, volume 1. Mifsud denied. Mifsud also falsely stated. In addition, Mifsud omitted. 3 times he lied to the FBI, yet you didn't charge him with the crime.
Excuse me, did you say one? I'm sorry, did you say 193?
Volume 1, 193. He lied 3 times. You pointed out in the report. Why didn't you charge him with the crime?
I can't get into internal deliberations with regard who would or would not be.
Charge a lot of other people for making false statements. Let's remember this. In 2016, the FBI did something they probably haven't done before. They spied on 2 American citizens associated with a presidential campaign, George Papadopoulos and Carter Page. With Carter Page, they went to the FISA court. They used the now famous dossier as part of the reason they were able to get the warrant and spy on Carter Page for a better part of a year. With Mr. Papadopoulos, they didn't go to the court. They used human sources. All kinds of, from about the moment Papadopoulos joins the Trump campaign, you got all these people all around the world starting to swirl around him. Names like Halper, Downer, Mifsud, Thompson, meeting in Rome, London, all kinds of places. The FBI even sent a lady posing as somebody else, went by the name Azra Turk, even dispatched her to London to spy on Mr. Papadopoulos. In one of these meetings, Mr. Papadopoulos is talking to a foreign diplomat, and he tells the diplomat, Russians have dirt on Clinton. That diplomat then contacts the FBI, and the FBI opens an investigation based on that fact. You point this out on page 1 of the report. July 31st, 2016, they open the investigation based on that piece of information. Diplomat tells Papadopoulos, Papadopoulos tells a diplomat, Russians have dirt on Clinton. Diplomat tells the FBI. What I'm wondering is, who told Papadopoulos?
Who told Papadopoulos?
How'd he find out?
I can't get into the evidentiary.
I can't tell you.
Yes, you can, because you wrote about it. You gave us the answer. Page 192 of the...
He doesn't even know what's in his own goddamn... I can't tell you who told him, because that would out the whole thing. We already know. Watch this. Who told him?
Port, you tell us who told him. Joseph Mifsud. Joseph Mifsud's a guy who told Papadopoulos. The mysterious professor who lives in Rome and London, teaches in 2 different universities. This is the guy who told Papadopoulos. He's the guy who starts it all. And when the FBI interviews him, he lies 3 times, and yet you don't charge him with a crime. You charge Rick Gates for false statements. You charge Paul Manafort for false statements. You charge Michael Cohen with false statements. You charge Michael Flynn, a 3-star general, with false statements. But the guy who puts the country through this whole saga, starts it all for 3 years we've lived this now, he lies, and you guys don't charge him. And I'm curious as to why.
Well, I can't get into it, and it's obvious, I think, that we can't get into charging decisions.
When the FBI interviewed him in February, FBI interviews him in February, when the special counsel's office interviewed Mifsud, did he lie to you guys too?
Can't get into that.
Did you interview Mifsud?
Can't get into that.
Is Mifsud Western intelligence or Russian intelligence?
Can't get into that.
A lot of things you can't get into. What's interesting, you can charge 13 Russians no one's ever heard of, no one's ever seen, no one's ever going to hear of them, no one's ever going to see them. You can charge them. You can charge all kinds of people who are around the president with false statements. But the guy who launches the guy who puts this whole story in motion, You can't charge him. I think that's amazing.
I'm not certain I agree with your characterization.
I'm reading from your report. Mifsud told Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos tells the diplomat tells the FBI opens the investigation July 31st, 2016, and here we are 3 years later, July of 2019, the country's been put through this, and the central figure who launches it all lies to us, and you guys don't hunt him down and interview him again, and you don't charge him with a crime. Now, here's the good news. Here's the good news. The president was falsely accused of conspiracy. The FBI does a 10-month investigation, and James Comey, when we deposed him a year ago, told us at that point they had nothing. You do a 22-month investigation. At the end of that 22 months, you find no conspiracy. And what's the Democrats want to do? They want to keep investigating. They want to keep going. Maybe a better course of action is to figure out how the false accusation started. Maybe it's to go back and actually figure out why Joseph Mifsud was lying to the FBI. And here's the good news. Here's the good news. That's exactly what Bill Barr's doing.
So that, again, they don't show you that on the news. That's not highlighted. That the guy who started this whole thing lied to you guys. You didn't charge him. Is he working for you? I can't tell you. Is he working for you? Can't tell you. Is he working for the Russians? Can't tell you. Why didn't you re-interview him? I can't tell you. Why didn't you interview the guy? They can't tell you. So to me, that was the jaw dropper when I saw that. Like, you guys don't even care about the guy who started this whole thing? You guys didn't, he lied to you 3 times, he didn't get charged? The guy who started the whole thing. So you don't have any, anyway, it is shocking. And, you know, you're not, again, if you watch the news, you're going to think, oh, God damn it, Trump did it. He said he didn't exonerate him. That's all you're going to hear. You're not going to hear the act. You're not going to, I mean, I could show you video clip after video clip of them ripping this guy to shreds. Robert Mueller ripped to shreds, exposed for the lying propagandist tool of the intelligence community that he is. And he's not a tool. He's one of them.
And he's been doing he's been testifying in front of Congress for 30 years.
Yeah.
Like this is his home field. Like he does this.
That's right. And he's got a lot of tells, and when he lies, you can tell he's lying. And he's a big liar. And the whole thing. So again, the conclusions of the thing. We have no evidence of any conspiracy between Trump, his campaign, anybody close to him at all. No, none. That should be it. No. Oh, but I can't exonerate him. Is that a legal term? No. No, I want to keep pushing for my establishment because the intelligence community invented this.
The FBI claims the counterintelligence investigation of the Trump campaign began on July 31st, 2016. But in fact, it began before that. In June 2016, before the investigation officially opened, Trump campaign associates Carter Page and Stephen Miller, a current Trump advisor, were invited to attend a symposium at Cambridge University in July 2016. Your office, however, did not investigate who was responsible for inviting these Trump associates to this symposium. Your investigators also failed to interview Stephen Schrage, an American citizen who helped organize the event and invited Carter Page to it. Is that correct?
Can you repeat the question?
Whether or not you interviewed Stephen Schrage, who organized the Cambridge.
In those areas, I am going to stay away from.
I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. Can't tell you. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. They can't tell you. I can't tell you.
The first Trump associate to be investigated was General Flynn. Many of the allegations against him stem from false media reports that he had an affair with a Cambridge academic, Svetlana Lokova, and that Lokova was a Russian spy. Some of these allegations were made public in a 2017 article written by British intelligence historian Christopher Andrew. Your report fails to reveal how or why Andrew and his collaborator, Richard Dearlove, former head of Britain's MI6, spread these allegations. and you failed to interview Svetlana Lokova about these matters. Is that correct?
I'm not going to get into those matters to which you refer.
I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. Can't tell you. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. They can't tell you. I can't tell you.
You had a team of 19 lawyers, 40 agents, and an unlimited budget, correct, Mr. Mueller?
I would not say we had an unlimited budget.
Let's continue with the the opening of the investigation, supposedly on July 31st, 2016. The investigation was not opened based on an official product from Five Eyes Intelligence, but based on a rumor conveyed by Alexander Downer. On volume 1, page 89, your report describes him blandly as a representative of a foreign government. But he was actually a long-time Australian politician, not a military or intelligence official, who had previously arranged a $25 million donation to the Clinton Foundation and has previous ties to Dearlove. So Downer conveys a rumor he supposedly heard about a conversation between Papadopoulos and Joseph Mifsud. James Comey has publicly called Mifsud a Russian agent, yet your report does not refer to Mifsud as a Russian agent. Mifsud has extensive contacts with Western governments and the FBI. For example, there is a recent photo of him standing next to Boris Johnson, the new Prime Minister of Great Britain. What we're trying to figure out here, Mr. Mueller, is if our NATO allies or Boris Johnson have been compromised. So we're trying to figure out, Comey says Mifsud is a Russian agent, you do not. So do you stand by what's in the report?
I'd stand by that which is in the report and not so necessarily with that which is not in the report.
I want to return to Mr. Downer. He denies that Papadopoulos mentioned anything to him about Hillary Clinton's emails. And in fact, Mifsud denies mentioning to Papadopoulos. He denies that Papadopoulos mentioned anything to him about Hillary Clinton's emails. And in fact, Mifsud denies mentioning them to Papadopoulos in the first place. So how does the FBI know to continually ask Papadopoulos about Clinton's emails for the rest of 2016? Even more strangely, your sentencing memo on Papadopoulos blames him for hindering the FBI's ability to potentially detain or arrest Mifsud. But the truth is, Mifsud waltzed in and out of the United States in December 2016. The US media could find him, the Italian press found him, and he's a supposed Russian agent at the epicenter of the purported collusion conspiracy. He's the guy who knows about Hillary Clinton's emails and that the Russians have them. But the FBI failed to question him for a half a year after officially opening the investigation. And then according to volume 1, page 193 of your report, once Mifsud finally was questioned, he made false statements to the FBI. But you declined to charge him. Is that correct? You did not indict Mr. Mifsud?
I'm not going to speak to the series of happenings as you articulated them.
I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. Can't tell you. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. They can't tell you. I can't tell you.
But you did not indict Mr. Mifsud.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Pardon?
You did not indict Mr. Mifsud.
True.